Hello everybody, welcome back to the FFA Way podcast. I'm your host, Madison Polly, and today we're talking about something that is truly at the heart of the FFA experience. It's called the Supervised Agriculture Experience, or SAE for short. Now, if you've been in FFA for a while, you've probably heard the term SAE thrown around in class, at meetings, during award applications, but if you're a newer member or maybe an incoming freshman who's listening because you're curious about ag and FFA, you might be wondering, what is an SAE? So don't worry, because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. And before we jump into today's episode, I do want to apologize for the lack of uploads recently. In the past few weeks have honestly been a whirlwind. Between studying for finals, wrapping up the school year, and showing at the Sac County Fair, spending this past week at the Washington Leadership Conference, which is super exciting, life has been moving about 100 miles per hour. In fact, I just got back from Washington, D.C. yesterday, and it's funny because when you're in the middle of all these experiences, you don't really realize how busy you've been until you really sit down and take a breath. Over the past month, I've gone from final exams to fair prep to showing animals, packing bags for DC, to spending a week learning about leadership and service with FFA members from all across the country. It was so cool. And honestly, one thing that kept coming up throughout all those experiences was growth. Because it doesn't just happen in a classroom. It doesn't happen when you're just sitting at a desk taking notes. Some of the biggest lessons I've learned have come from actually doing things, from raising animals, running projects, making mistakes, from trying something new and having no idea what I was doing at first. And that's exactly what SAE projects are all about. Before recording this episode, I put up a poll and asked all of you guys what topic you wanted to hear next. And there were several great options, but SAE projects ended up winning by a pretty large margin. And honestly, I'm not very surprised at all, because SAE projects are one of the things that almost every FFA member has questions about. Whether it's, how do I start one? What counts as a SAE? Do I need animals? How do I make it unique? Can I turn my hobbies into an SAE? We're going to be answering all those questions today. But before we talk about the different types of SAE projects, I want to talk about why they exist in the first place. Because if we're being honest, sometimes people see SAEs as another requirement. It's another thing to log, another form to fill out, another award application section, and that's not what they're supposed to be. And at its core, SAE is an opportunity. And it's the opportunity to take what you're learning in agriculture and apply it to the real world. And think about it this way. Imagine trying to learn how to drive by only reading a driver's handbook. You can memorize every single road sign in your area, and you can know every single traffic law, and you could ace the written test, but until you actually get behind the wheel, you don't truly know how to drive. And agriculture honestly works the same way, and you can learn about plants in class, you can learn about livestock nutrition, you can learn about agribusiness and marketing, but SAE really gives you the chance to actually experience it. And it's where learning actually becomes real. And for me personally, some of the biggest lessons I've learned through agriculture came from experiences, not textbooks. Even though textbooks are important, it doesn't beat experience. And because showing livestock, it taught me responsibility, and running projects taught me organization, and preparing for competitions taught me discipline. And you can't quite get those lessons from a textbook. I mean, you can try, but it probably won't be nearly as effective. And that's why I love SAE projects so much. They allow every student to create their own path. One student might raise market goats, another might work at a local feed store, someone else might start a floral business. And the amazing thing is that all those projects can be SAE projects, because agriculture is so much bigger than what many people think. Because when they think of agriculture, they often picture cows and farms. And yes, those things are absolutely part of agriculture. But agriculture is also business, marketing, engineering, education, leadership, communications, environmental science, food production, even technology. It's so much bigger than people realize. And because agriculture is so broad, SAE opportunities are almost endless. One of my favorite things about talking with FFA members is hearing about their projects. While I was in WLC in the past week, I've heard about so many different SAE projects. Some students have projects that make complete sense right away. Others have projects that make you stop and think, wow, I never even considered that could be an SAE. Those ones are usually my favorite, and I heard a lot about those this weekend, because they usually show how creative agriculture can be. In fact, if you're listening to this episode right now and you're thinking, I don't have an SAE idea, I want you to challenge that thought. Think about your interests, your hobbies, and think about things you've already spent your time doing. You might be closer to an SAE idea than you realize. Maybe you enjoy photography, social media, working with younger students, business. There are possibilities everywhere. One lesson I learned at WLC this week is that impact starts when you take action. You don't have to have the biggest project, and you don't have to have the most animals. You don't even have to have the most money invested. You just have to start. Every successful SAE began with someone taking the first step. And that's something I hope every listener remembers from this episode. Your SAE doesn't have to look like everyone else's. It just has to be yours. So now that we've talked about what an SAE is, why it matters, and why every FFA member should consider having one, let's actually dive into the different categories of SAE projects and explore some ideas that might inspire your next adventure in agriculture. Now let's discuss the different categories of SAE projects. In fact, one of the biggest misconceptions I hear is that SAE projects is all about raising livestock for the county fair. And don't get me wrong, livestock projects are incredible. They teach responsibility, work ethic, record keeping, and countless life lessons. But agriculture is so much bigger than livestock. And when you think about it this way, agriculture includes science, business, mechanics, communications, educations, technology, agriculture, natural resources, food production, and so much more. Because agriculture is so diverse, and SAE projects are just as diverse. And that's why FFA organizes SAE projects into several different categories. These categories help students find opportunities that fit their interests, their goals, and available resources. Maybe you want to start your own business. Maybe you want to gain work experiences. Maybe you are still finding out what part of agriculture interests you. And that is where SAE categories, or there is an SAE categories for all of those students. And today, we're going to focus on 4 major categories that many FFA members encounter: exploratory, placement, entrepreneurship, and research. Each one offers unique opportunities. Each one develops different skills, and each one can help prepare you for a future career. We're going to spend some more time diving into each category because I think too many students limit themselves before they begin. I've heard students say things like, I don't have animals, I don't have enough money, I don't know what I want to do. And while those concerns are completely understandable, they usually aren't barriers to starting an SAE. In fact, some of the most creative SAE projects I've ever seen from students are from the students who thought they couldn't have one. You know, the students who worked at local businesses, conducted research, educated others, turned hobbies into opportunities. That is the beauty of SAE projects. They're not designed to fit everyone into the same box, but they're designed to help you discover your own path. As we move through today's episode, I want you to keep an open mind. Even if you already started an SAE, just listen to this carefully. Maybe you may discover another area of agriculture that interests you, and you may find a way to expand your project. So here's how the rest of today's episode is going to work. We're going to take each category one at a time, and we're going to talk about what it is, who it's best suited for. We'll explore the real-world examples, and we'll look at the skills it develops. And most importantly, we'll talk about how you can get started. By the end of this episode, my goal is that every listener can identify at least one SAE category that excites them. Because the hardest part of any SAE project isn't record books, it isn't applications, it isn't paperwork. The hardest part is actually getting started. And hopefully after today's episode, that first step will feel a whole lot easier. So let's begin with the category that many FFA members start with: exploratory SAEs. Exploratory SAEs are where many agricultural journeys begin. Before someone starts a business, before they conduct research, before they get a job in the industry, they usually start by exploring. They start by asking questions, and they start by learning. They start by discovering what interests them. And that's exactly what exploratory SAE is designed to do. And at its core, an exploratory SAE allows students to investigate different areas of agriculture and learn about careers, industries, and opportunities within the ag field. Think about it as an ag career exploration. The goal isn't necessarily to make money. The goal isn't to own a business. The goal isn't even to become an expert, but the goal is to learn. And honestly, I think that's something we don't talk about enough. Sometimes students feel pressured to have something figured out, everything figured out, what career they want, what college they want to attend, what industry they want to work in. But the truth is, most people don't have all the answers, and that is 100% okay. Exploratory SAEs exist because discovering what you enjoy is just as valuable as becoming an expert at it. Let's just say you're interested in veterinary medicine. You might spend time shadowing a veterinarian, or you could ask questions about the career path, and you can learn about animal care, and you could observe surgeries or appointments when appropriate. You can gain exposure to the profession and decide whether it's something you might want to pursue in the future. That is an exploratory SAE. Maybe you're interested in the wine industry. Living here in California, we're surrounded by agriculture, including vineyards and wineries, and you can tour local operations, interview vineyard managers, learn about grape production, study the business side of the history or of the industry, sorry. And through that experience, you might discover a passion you didn't even know you had. That is an exploratory SAE. Maybe you're interested in agriculture communications and you can listen to ag podcasts, you can attend industry events, listen to ag leaders, and research careers in journalism, marketing, or media. Again, that is an exploratory SAE. The opportunities are endless. And one thing I love about those SAEs is that they're incredibly accessible. You don't need land, you don't need livestock, you don't need expensive equipment. You don't even need to know exactly what you want to do. You just need an open mind and a willingness to learn. In many ways, exploratory SAEs are perfect for green hands and first year members. Think back to when you first joined FFA. Most of us had a very limited understanding of ag. We knew very few things, at least the majority of us. We had certain interests, but we just didn't know how many opportunities existed. Agriculture is one of the largest industries in the world. There are careers in science, technology, engineering, business, communications, animal health, plant systems, education, like all those I named before, and dozens of other ideas. Exploratory SAEs give students a chance to discover those opportunities. And I actually wish more students took advantage of them because sometimes we become so focused on choosing a project that we forget to explore what's out there first. Imagine choosing a college major without ever learning about the options. That wouldn't make much sense. The same principle applies here. Exploration often leads to opportunity. In fact, many students who eventually develop placement or entrepreneurship or research SAEs begin with an exploratory SAE. Maybe they shadow someone at a vet clinic. A few months later, they're hired there. Now their project becomes a placement SAE. Maybe they visit a floral shop and become interested in floral design. Eventually, they start their own floral business. Now they've moved into entrepreneurship. Or maybe they attend a workshop about soil health and become fascinated by ag science. Later, they design and conduct their own experiment. Now they're conducting a research SAE. The point is that exploration creates possibilities, and you never know where a conversation, a tour, an internship, a workshop, or an industry visit might lead. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned through FFA is that opportunities often come from simply showing up. Whether that's an event, a conference, you ask questions, you show up to learn. And exploratory SAEs are built around that exact idea. You don't have to know everything, you just have to be curious. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking, I don't know what SAE I want to do, my advice is simple to you. Start exploring, talk to ag professionals, visit businesses, attend conference, do your own research, ask questions, tour facilities, listen to people's stories. The more you explore, the clearer your path becomes. And remember, discovering what you don't enjoy can be just as valuable as discovering what you do enjoy. Every experience teaches you something, and every conversation teaches you something. Every opportunity helps shape your future, and that's why exploratory SAEs are so important. They help students discover where they belong within the incredible world of agriculture. And who knows, the career you're passionate about in about 10 years from now might start with a simple exploratory SAE today. And now that we've talked about exploring agriculture, we should probably move on to the next category, the one that allows students to gain hands-on experience while working in the industry, placement SAEs. This is where you move beyond simply learning about a career and actually begin working in it. A placement SAE is any project where you're working for someone else and gaining ag experience in the process. This could be a paid position, an unpaid internship, or it could be volunteering. The important thing is that you're developing skills and gaining hands-on experience in an ag setting. And placement SAEs are some of the most valuable projects a student can have. Why? Because you're getting real-world experience before most people your age even start thinking about careers. Now, you can think about that for a second as well. A lot of students graduate high school with very little workplace experience, but through an SAE, a placement SAE, FFA members have the opportunity to start building professional skills years earlier. You're learning how to communicate with supervisors, and you're learning how to work with customers, you're learning how to manage your time, and you learn responsibility. And those are skills that transfer to every career, not just agriculture. One thing I love about placement SAEs is how broad they can be. A lot of students hear placement SAE and immediately think of farm labor. And while working on a farm absolutely counts, that's only one possibility. Now let's talk about a few examples. Maybe you work at a feed store. Every day, you're helping customers, learning about feed products, understanding livestock needs, and gaining industry knowledge. That is a placement SAE. Maybe you work at a vet clinic. You help with cleaning, organization, customer service, and animal care while learning about vet medicine. That is also a placement SAE. Or maybe you work at a greenhouse or nursery. You're learning about plant production, customer service, irrigation systems, and business operations. That is a placement SAE. Maybe you work for a landscaper. Maybe you help at a floral shop. Or maybe you assist at a winery. Maybe you could work for an ag equipment company. All those experiences can qualify as placement SAEs. What's interesting is that placement SAEs often teach lessons you can't learn in a classroom. For example, let's say your shift starts at 8 o'clock. You learn pretty quickly that showing up at 8:05 isn't actually showing up on time. You learn accountability, you learn professionalism, and you learn that other people are depending on you. And those are lessons that definitely stick with you in any career you decide to go into. And sometimes those lessons aren't always easy. Maybe you make mistakes or you forgot something, maybe you struggle at first, and that's a part of the process. The workplace is one of the best classrooms you'll ever have. Another thing I also appreciate about placement SAEs is the networking opportunities they create. The ag industry is surprisingly connected. The people you meet today may become future coworkers, mentors, professors, business partners, or employers. You never know what might open a door for you down the road. And that's why I always encourage students to take their placement SAEs seriously, even if your job doesn't seem glamorous, and even if you're just sweeping floors, maybe you're doing tasks that feel really small. People notice hard work. People remember positive attitudes. People remember students who are willing to learn. And sometimes those little opportunities turn into much bigger opportunities later. And let's also talk about misconception. Some students think a placement SAE only matters if they're earning a lot of money. And that's not true at all. The value of a placement SAE isn't just the paycheck, but it's the experiences, the skills, connections, confidence. And if you think about it this way, if you spend a summer working at a vet clinic and you discover that veterinary medicine isn't for you, that's still valuable. Like I said before, you're learning something important about yourself. And if you discover that you absolutely love it, that's valuable too. Either way, you've gained knowledge and that knowledge helps guide your future decisions. And I also think placement SAEs are a great option for students who aren't ready to start their own business yet. Entrepreneurship can be exciting, but also comes with risk. Working for someone else first can allow you to see and learn how an operation functions before trying to manage one yourself. You get to observe, you get to ask questions, you get to learn from people who have years of experience under their belt. And that knowledge can be incredibly valuable later on. And in many cases, a placement SAE becomes the foundation of a future success. Some students might eventually start businesses because of what they learned through placement. Others discover what careers they've never considered. Others build relationships that lead to scholarships, internships, and job opportunities. And that's why placement SAEs are so powerful. They're not just jobs, they're learning experiences, they're opportunities to grow professionally. They're opportunities to build confidence. And they're opportunities to see what agriculture industry actually looks like beyond the classroom. So if you're someone who's looking for an SAE and you're not really quite sure where to begin, consider looking for opportunities to work, volunteer, or intern within ag. You might be surprised how much you can learn and how much you can discover a career path you never expected. Now that we've talked about exploring careers and working within the industry, next we're going to discuss the category that many people think of when they hear the words SAE project. Entrepreneurship SAEs. Entrepreneurship SAEs is where you're managing a project that's entirely your own. And honestly, there's a reason entrepreneurship SAEs are so popular. There is something incredibly rewarding about building up something from the ground up. At its core, an entrepreneurship SAE is exactly what it sounds like. It's a project that you own, manage, and operate yourself. You're not working for someone else. You're the one making the decisions. You're the one setting goals, and you're the one taking all the responsibility. And while that can be exciting, it also means you're the one learning from all the mistakes. And that's what makes entrepreneurship SAE such a powerful learning experience. Because when you're running your own project, suddenly everything becomes real. Let's take market livestock projects as an example. Many FFA members start their entrepreneurship journey by raising a market goat, lamb, hog, or steer, etc. At first, it might seem like you're just feeding an animal and getting it ready for the fair. But when you look closer, you're actually running a business. You're creating a budget, purchasing supplies, you're tracking expenses, managing nutrition, you're monitoring health, marketing your project, and you're networking with potential buyers. And ultimately, you're hoping to generate a return on your investment. That is entrepreneurship. And the animal is just one part of the project. The real lesson is everything happening behind the scenes. And the same thing applies to every other entrepreneurship SAE. Let's say you own a lawn care business. You are scheduling clients, managing your finances, advertising your services, communicating with customers, and solving problems. Or let's say maybe you sell floral arrangements. You have to source your materials, determine pricing, market your products, build relationships with your customers. Or maybe you raise and sell chickens, or maybe you produce honey through beekeeping. Maybe you grow produce to sell at a farmer's market. Or maybe you post ag content online. The possibilities are quite literally endless, and what's important is that you're taking ownership of the project. A lot of people think entrepreneurship is about making money, and while earning money can absolutely be part of it, I don't think that's the most valuable lesson. And I think the most valuable lesson is learning how to fail. And that might sound strange, but hear me out. When you run your project, things won't always go according to plan. Animals can get sick, equipment can break, weather changes, customers cancel orders, markets can fluctuate, projects lose money, and mistakes happen. That's okay. Because some of the greatest lessons come from those moments. How to adapt, how to solve problems, recovering from setbacks. Those are the skills that stay with you for the rest of your life, no matter what career you go into. In fact, many successful entrepreneurs will tell you that failure taught them more than success ever did, just like we talked about in our last episode. And entrepreneurship SAEs provide a safe environment to learn those lessons while you're still in high school. Another thing I love about entrepreneurship SAEs is that they allow students to turn passion into projects. And if you think about that for a moment, I want you to think, what do you enjoy doing? What excites you? What skills do you already have? There might be an SAE hidden inside that passion. For example, let's say you love photography. You can start an ag photography business. Same goes with social media, teaching, graphic design. Agriculture is literally everywhere, and because agriculture is everywhere, entrepreneurship opportunities are everywhere too. One thing I always tell younger members is don't compare your SAE to someone else's. It is easy to look around and think your project isn't big enough. Maybe someone has 20 market animals. Maybe someone has a large operation. Maybe someone has been building their project for years. But every successful SAE started somewhere. Nobody starts at the finish line, and every entrepreneur starts with one idea, one customer, one animal, one project, one step. Your project doesn't need to be massive to be meaningful. What matters is that you're learning and you're growing. What matters is that you're developing skills that'll help you in the future. And here's something really cool about entrepreneurship SAEs. Many of them, continue long after high school. Some students can turn their SAE projects into actual careers. Some expand them into successful businesses. Some discover lifelong passions. And what starts as an SAE can become something much bigger than you've ever imagined. And that's why I love these type of SAEs so much. They're creative. They're challenging. They're incredibly rewarding. And you get what you give into them. And they give students an opportunity to build something that they could truly call their own. And I think that's really cool. And at the end of the day, entrepreneurship SAEs teach lessons that can't be found in a textbook. And to add on to that, they teach financial literacy. And perhaps, most importantly, they teach confidence. Now that we've talked about exploring careers, gaining workplace experience, and creating projects of your own, what if your passion lies in asking questions, solving problems, and discovering new information? That's where our final category comes in, research SAEs. And I have to be honest, I think this is one of the most overlooked categories in all of FFA. When many students hear the word research, they immediately think of a giant science fair project, pages of data, complicated graphs, and long reports. And while research can involve those things, that's not really truly what research is about at its core. Research is about curiosity, and it's about asking questions. It's about noticing something and wondering, why does that happen? Or is there a better way to do this? And if you've ever asked a question and wanted to find the answer, you've already began thinking like a researcher. Agriculture has always been driven by innovation. Every advancement we see today started because someone asked a question. How can we grow more food? How can we use less water? How can we improve animal health? How can we make farming more efficient? Those questions led to discoveries that changed agriculture forever. And through a research SAE, students get the opportunity to be a part of that process. Now, a research SAE involves conducting an investigation using scientific process to answer a question related to agriculture. That sounds pretty complicated, but let's break it down. Step 1 is simply identifying a question. Maybe you're interested in plant science. You might ask, which fertilizer produces the most plant growth? Or how does sunlight affect crop development? Or maybe you're interested in animal science. You can investigate feed efficiency, housing conditions, growth rates, animal behavior. Or maybe you're more interested in environmental science. You could study water quality, soil health, pollinator populations, sustainability practices. The possibilities are endless. And the beauty of research is that it allows students to focus on subjects they genuinely care about. And that's important because the best research usually begins with genuine curiosity. And one thing I really appreciate about research SAEs is that they teach students how to think. Not what to think, but how to think. In today's world, information is everywhere. Anyone can search something online and find thousands of answers. But research teaches you how to evaluate information, how to gather evidence, how to test ideas, how to draw conclusions. And those are skills valuable no matter what career you pursue. Now, let's imagine you're conducting a research project on irrigation. You think one watering method might work better than another. And instead of guessing, you design an experiment. You collect data, compare results, analyze what happened, and then you use evidence to support your conclusion. That is a skill that extends far beyond ag. It's called critical thinking. And critical thinking is one of the most important skills anyone can develop. Research SAEs are also perfect for students who enjoy science but want to also apply it to real-world problems. Sometimes, science classes can feel disconnected from everyday life. Research SAEs allow us to bridge that gap. They allow students to investigate challenges that actually affect producers, consumers, and communities. In other words, you're not just learning science, but you're using science to solve problems. And agriculture needs problem solvers. Think about some of the challenges agriculture faces today. Water shortages, climate variability, food security, animal health concerns, environmental sustainability. Future generations of agriculture leaders will help address those issues, and some of those future leaders are sitting in the ag classrooms right now. Some may be even listening to this podcast, and some may discover their passion through a research SAE. Another thing I want to point out is that research SAEs don't require you to have all the answers. Actually, it's the opposite, because research begins because you don't know the answer. And that's what makes it super exciting, is you're exploring something new and you're investigating, you're discovering. Sometimes your results don't support your hypothesis. Sometimes they do. But either way, I think that's one of the biggest lessons research can teach us. Not every experiment goes perfectly. Not every result is as we expected. Not every result tells us something valuable. Failure in research isn't really failure. It's information. It's knowledge. And sometimes those unexpected results lead to the most important discoveries. Now, let's talk about who should consider a research SAE. If you enjoy science, this category is definitely worth exploring. Maybe you enjoy solving problems, or maybe you're naturally curious. I would check this one out. If you're someone who constantly asks questions and wants to understand why things work the way they do, this category might just be a perfect fit. And even if science isn't your favorite subject, don't write off research SAEs too quickly, because research exists in nearly every area of agriculture. Whether it's plant science, animal science, environmental systems, food products, ag technology, natural resources, these are opportunities for every interest. And at the end of the day, research SAEs remind us that agriculture is constantly evolving. There are always new questions to ask, and there's new challenges to solve, new ideas to explore, and that's super exciting because it means agriculture isn't just about preserving traditions, but it's also about creating the future. And research SAEs give students a chance to be a part of that future. So today, we've explored all 4 major SAE categories. We've talked about the exploratory SAE, which helps students discover opportunities. We talked about placement SAEs, which provide real-world work experiences. And we've discussed entrepreneurship SAEs, which is where students build and manage projects of their own. And then we've finally covered research SAEs, which allow students to investigate questions and develop solutions. The amazing thing is that none of these categories is better than the others. They're simply just different paths, different experiences, and different ways to learn and grow. The best SAE isn't the biggest one, and it isn't the most expensive one either. It isn't the one that wins the most awards, but the best SAE is the one that challenges you and teaches you something new and helps you grow as a person. Okay, Madison, that's great, but how do I actually choose one? And honestly, I think that's the question every FFA member asks at some point. Because the hardest part of an SAE isn't usually keeping records, and it's not filling out applications. It's not even starting, honestly. The hardest part is typically deciding what to do. And when people have too many options, they often end up choosing none of them. And agriculture is full of options. So if you're trying to decide on an SAE, I want to give you a few questions to ask yourself. The first question is pretty simple. What are you already interested in? Not what your friends are doing, not what you think will win awards, but what genuinely interests you. Because if you choose an SAE solely because someone else is doing it, there's a good chance you'll lose motivation when things get pretty difficult. And trust me, every SAE gets difficult at some point. And the projects that last are usually the projects people care about. Maybe you love animals, maybe you love business, maybe you love science, maybe you love social media, photography, teaching, mechanics, public speaking. Start there. Your interests are often the best clue toward finding an SAE you'll actually enjoy. And now my second question is, what resources do you already have available to you? This is important because a good SAE is realistic. For example, if you don't have any access to land, then raising 20 head of livestock might not be the best place to start. If you don't have thousands of dollars to invest, that's alright. Most students don't. Start with what you have. One of my favorite things about SAE projects is that they can grow over time. Your first year does not need to be huge. It just needs to exist. A small project that you actually complete is far better than a massive project that never actually gets started. The third question is, what skills do you want to develop? Maybe you're interested in becoming more confident, or maybe you want business experience, maybe you want leadership opportunities, maybe you want workplace experience before college. Different SAE categories develop different skills. Think about where you want to grow. Then choose a project that helps you get there. And now I also want to talk about something I see all the time, which is comparison. It is so easy to compare your SAE to everyone else's. You can see someone with a successful livestock project, and you see someone winning awards, and you see someone with years of experience under their belt, and suddenly your project feels smaller. But here's the truth. You aren't competing against their starting point. You're comparing yourself to their current chapter while you're still on page 1. Every impressive SAE has started small. Every successful project was once just an idea, and every student who seems to have it figured out was once a green hand wondering where to start. Don't let comparison stop you from beginning, because agriculture needs your ideas, your perspective, your talents, not someone else's, but yours. And one lesson I've learned through FFA is that some of the most impactful projects aren't necessarily the biggest. Sometimes the most impactful projects are the most meaningful, meaning your SAE helps educate consumers about agriculture. Maybe it serves your community. Maybe it inspires younger students, or maybe it helps solve a problem. Impact isn't measured only in dollars or awards. It's measured in growth, and it's measured in the difference you're making. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I wanted to create the FFA Way podcast in the first place. Agriculture has given me so many opportunities, and it's introduced me to so many incredible people. It has challenged me, and it helped me grow as a leader. And if sharing these experiences helped even just one student find a project they're passionate about, then that's worth it to me. So if you're listening today and you don't currently have an SAE, this is my challenge to you. Take one step this week. Talk to your advisor, research an idea, visit a local business, call someone in an industry you're interested in. You can start a notebook of ideas, write down your goals. Just do something, just one step, because momentum starts with action, and you don't need to have the entire project planned out today. You just need to take the first step, and who knows, the project you start this year might become your future career. It might become a business, a lifelong passion, or it simply might teach you a valuable lesson that will be useful to you in your future. All of those outcomes are worth a while. At the end of the day, SAE projects are about growth, and they're about taking what you learn in the classroom and applying it to the real world. They're about discovering who you are, where you fit in agriculture, and that's what makes them such an important part of the FFA experience. Thank you all for listening so much to this episode of the FFA Way podcast. I truly appreciate every single one of you who takes the time to listen, support, and be a part of this community. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to share it with a fellow FFA member who might be looking for an SAE idea. And if there's a topic that you'd like to hear in a future episode, don't forget to reach out through the FFA Way social media pages. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, keep serving, and keep finding your way in agriculture.